order. We've got a big agenda today.
Really?
Senator Lang.
They're everywhere. I'm like,
Well, the university, a group of
Thank
students
you.
from the University
Okay.
of Wisconsin.
The first thing on the agenda today is to approve the agenda. I think we need to add one item, which is just approval of our calendar, which shouldn't take too long. So I would love a motion adding that agenda item and approving the agenda.
so moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You were sent the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion for approval? Denny, you reviewed them.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any conflict of interest to report today? All right, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Good morning. Just a reminder for everybody, this is our second meeting of live video broadcast, so smiles, everybody. Thanks to the House again for accommodating us on that. And in case you have anybody ask, it does go over the House website, but also the House YouTube channels. A couple of things just to keep you appraised of what staff's been doing besides all the other stuff. I was able to attend about a week ago, a discussion and information seminar called Protecting and Restoring Natural Systems in the Twin City Metro. Basically, it was a revisit of the Greenways program, and that Chair Hartwell was able to attend as well. Interesting. We'll see if that gets any traction and where or if it goes anywhere, but that's a chance to look back on what had been done and were they going to go forward, and if so, under what vision. Also on last Friday, I met for the first time with the Clearwater Council Administrator Paul Gardner, also Jim Stark, who's the director of the Minnesota Policy the Water Policy Subcommittee, and LCCMR's director Becca Nash, and it was just our first attempt to try to have quarterly meetings so to get more communication between the councils. And it was interesting. We really had some items to talk about from a standpoint of where the funds are being collaborated or where they're being cross-spent or spent in parallel, at least. Besides that, the calendar is the next item. And there was a doodle poll we put out to council members asking about the fall hearings dates of September 1 through 3 and providing some alternatives to those. The report that came back from the council members looks like we're still at September 1, 2, and 3 for the best dates for everybody. So it looks like that there's no incentive to change or need to change at this point with regards to availability of calendars. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last meeting when I wasn't able to make it, when I was trying to listen in and actually, there's about a 45-second delay from live to what shows up on your computer screen when you're watching. So for members who may not be able to attend, the conversation and the video is out of sync. And I don't know if there's any way to fix that or not, but it was difficult to participate in the meeting, trying to watch what was going on and listen there, but then I just had to listen on the phone, so.
Our systems are not what we would want, either phone or video, in terms of participating remotely. I think that's a legislative issue. Any other comments or questions for Mark? So we have a full agenda today, and as you saw in the memo that Ron and I sent out yesterday, we had an unexpected surplus, which we will talk about later in the day, and how to spend it before we approve the bill. So I'm hoping everyone is planning on staying towards the end of the meeting because that's where the meat of our decision-making will take place. So please plan on doing that. You guys had a discussion at the last meeting that I was unable to attend about our communications and outreach program. And I understand there were no conclusions reached on that. Mark, do you have some background as to how to set this discussion up?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, with regards to the communication information and communication plan and the discussions for that, we are just coming to the end of that RFP with Russell Herder. And as you heard at the last meeting, we had an update from Russell Herder. They also gave us a periodic update back in June, I believe it was, the June 20th meeting, and that's in your background information on the memo as well. The staff has not made any plans with regards to moving forward with this, and the reason was we really wanted to find out where the council wants to go. Russell Herder has provided us with a proposal for professional services. It's at the end of your memo. It's attached to it. In case the council did want to move forward or continue the RFP at this point, it's kind of an à la carte proposal. That said, we've come quite a long ways. I think all of the benchmarks of the RFP have been met. The communication definitely has. We've been able to establish that system as well as that's going to be maintainable, as well as that can. It's going to be helpful to the project managers and to the staff and to hopefully to the council for getting information out. But right from the start, the reason for this has been not to be a media push. It's been to simply report, provide the transparency and the accountability for the outcomes and the information that we get, and which is part of our charge, I believe, as well. So I just want to make sure that's cleared. The discussion at this point is really about where do we want to go? Do we want to have somebody else doing it? Do we want to take a look at, have some of the council members get together and take a look with staff at exactly where the council would like to go here, or what's advisable, what might be brought back to the council for advice? Mr. Chair.
Sure.
After looking through a lot of the materials, I thought it might be positive to go back and revisit like the objectives and figure out what exactly we want to accomplish moving forward. So I appreciate the suggestion for for the council to revisit that in some way. So whatever that means.
You can make one more comment.
One more thing for the council members, just to remember, back in 2010, the council adopted a strategic communication plan at that point. And that was kind of, back then, it was great to have the plan. The problem was there wasn't the outcomes yet, or the outputs. There wasn't any data that the council could really report on for successes of the projects, because projects were just starting. Now, after you've had 5 or 6 years of projects being closed out, then we end up with much more from a standpoint of summaries of outcomes that can be, and data that can be reported. And that really, again, was part of the impetus back a year or 2 years ago when we started talking about how do we deal with our communications and what are our goals going to be. So looking back, if we have the discussion and look back at what the objectives are, going back to that original strategic plan would be another good thing for us to do. And I think we've done that already, but it still should be the basis of everything moving forward.
So are you, this is a leading question, are you encouraging us to maybe spend some time on the strategic plan, communications plan, and revisit that before we go forward with any new program, new initiative, or extension of a contract, so that the council has a chance to to revisit something that's now a decade old almost, and make sure it's what we really want to do and understand it better?
Mr. Chair and members, I think there are two things here. One is exactly that, is look back at the strategic plan and decide, does it provide the correct vision or the correct direction? The other thing, though, is more immediate, and that's just looking at our current communications. So we've had a year of setting this up. I don't think we want to let it drop. I don't think, from what I'm in talking with council members, I don't know if we're ready to extend or sign a contract with somebody to do that for us either. So the suggestion would be that staff, along with some guidance from council, at least the executive or a subcommittee or something, should continue to, with the current communications layouts that have been put in place, so we can continue to at least keep our communications going while this review is going under.
And you feel we can do that without spending any money on an outside resource?
Mr. Chair, I think we can. It won't be to the extent that it has been over the, because we're shorthanded right now, and it really depends on who we get in that position as commission assistant as well. But in the meantime, I think we can limp along at least.
Okay. So would the council have any objection to having a small group work with staff to review the strategic plan and where we're at communications-wise, and come back to us with a recommendation for what we do? And I would think a recommendation with several options. So it's not just, this is what you should do, but here's Plan A, Plan B, Plan C for consideration, kind of a strategy, so we can all then understand. For me, it's about what are our objectives? What do we want to actually accomplish in this, and understanding that, and then figuring out what the plan is. We clearly need to have some communications. The question becomes, how extensive are they, and what is the purpose of them? And I'm not clear at this point what we've decided collectively our purpose is, and think it would be a wise idea for us to do that. Does that make sense to the group before we spend any more money? Does anyone disagree with that strategy? Great. Well, I will work with staff. Ashley's our communications expert on the council. I'm going to ask her to perhaps lead that task force or subcommittee, whatever we want to call it, to work with staff. And if any of you are interested in participating, Kristen, thank you. Anyone else? I guess it's going to be a small committee. If we need someone else, I may call someone and ask you if you'll step in and do a little work. So do you have enough direction, Mark, that you're comfortable with? Okay. Great. Thank you all. Boy, we are just cranking through this today. Is Mike here? I don't see Mike.
Not yet.
We asked him to come at 9, and you know what? He's going to come at 9. What a good thought. Is anyone else here that we can?
Move ahead to, do we have MLT here, or?
I don't see Wayne here.
Skip to number 8.
We can skip to number 8. Thank you. I need my glasses on so I can read this. So, Ron and I, and Ron apologizes for not being able to be here today. He had a commitment in Florida. What a terrible place to have a commitment today. We've had a couple of conversations about what we want to accomplish in this year as a council. Clearly, we have to handle the allocation process. And we've set up a schedule around getting that accomplished. But there are a number of other items, as outlined in the memo as a start for discussion, that we think would make sense for us to address. As simple as, what are our procedures in case the chair dies? We don't have a procedure. We ought to probably have a procedure to do that. That's a relatively simple thing to schedule. But how we do the allocation process, as we'll talk about later today, there's a real disconnect in our mind between having the hearings and then all of us doing our allocation and then talking about, from a chair's proposal, then talking about, well, do you like it or not? You know, there's no exchange because Denny's got a great idea about this, or he has reservations about that, and he thinks we should only fund Part A of a three-part proposal, and Senator Lang thinks that something else really needs to be done because we're missing the boat there, and we don't have that discussion until we're really at the point where the money is sitting there in front of us, already recommended. So we don't take advantage of each other's expertise until really late in the process. And we'd like to revisit how we do that, and we'd like a discussion about that. And I use that as an example of things that we should put on our agenda to discuss before we get to them. And so I crafted a memo, which is in your packet, which lays out a couple of those, but I really want to open this up for discussion from you about other things that you think we should put on our agenda to talk about, to bring in experts on, to have discussion about, with the idea of being more educated and more efficient as we go through this really important process. So we would like to do that. We would like you to help us decide what the agenda is instead of your chair and vice chair just saying, well, let's talk about this today because we think it's important. We really think it's important for everyone to be able to weigh in, both right now and as we go forward. So with that, I just open it up for discussion. I hope there's some. Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a newer member of the council, I would love to have more of that, to hear from some of the more senior council members prior to there being allocations, not just for my own education, but so that I can talk to others about what I've heard and get some feedback in the meantime between when we first see the allocations and when the proposals are put forward. So I agree.
Other?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if others heard from, I got an email from someone who works in is a restoration professional, who had reached out to me and shared some information about, kind of the difference between taking out just invasive species and actually doing true restoration work, and some of the projects that he gets brought to him, and kind of wanting to bring it to my attention that sometimes people mean well, but the science and what we know, or what they know, I guess, as restoration professionals who are actually, know all the plants and know everything. I think it would be helpful to have more of that kind of information from the professionals who actually are going to be hired to do the work, to have kind of that scientific background to know whether some of the proposals are valid, because at this point, I don't have that background myself, and I think that would be really helpful in knowing if we're actually moving the ball forward or just kind of spinning our wheels with some of the projects that are brought forward.
Sure.
If I may, was that regarding Oak Savanna specifically?
Yes,
Yeah.
that email, but I mean, I think the topic is whether that particular person was, his perspective was something that we would all agree with or not. I think it just brought to my attention that, we're kind of just taking everybody's word for it, and maybe people are well-intentioned but don't.
Yeah.
No.
And so if I may, I agree with your comments with regards to it's always good to make sure that we're having the right projects come in front of us and having the professionals vet those projects and, and making sure that we've got the right input. With regards to that specific email, it came into us as staff strictly as a blind copy. And then, so I started reaching out to DNR as well as some other retired foresters who also got it blind copy. So it sounds like it kind of went out to a vast unknown number of people, and we were part of that, part of the recipient. So just so that council knows about that, I did reach out to DNR Forestry as well as some retired foresters to just see what was their take on it, and I can share that all with you. I'll send that out in the future. Thank you.
But I think the point is, how do we know when we're approving a restoration project that we're approving a good project? And we do have evaluations of them, which are done on a contract basis that have come in. So far, the scientists have said we've been doing the right stuff, but we don't have any way in advance to understand that. And I agree with you. One of the concerns would be, what's the long-term plan to maintain the restoration? If it's to cut buckthorn, if you don't do something beyond cutting buckthorn, you might as well not cut it. And if you don't have a 10-year plan for how you're going to restore that, it's not worth doing. And so to get the parameters of that might change what we actually ask for in terms of proposal information. So I think it's a good thing to add to it.
And I would just add on to that, I think we had discussed this previously, whether or not the major proposers get together on some sort of roundtable discussion to try and talk about what works, what doesn't. We have a unique situation here that we have a lot of money going towards conservation in the state of Minnesota, and let's make sure that we're learning from that, and perhaps this could be a forum that we hear from those proposers and the people on the ground that are doing the work to say, this is what works really well, this is what doesn't work, and that could help not only inform us, but also other people that are proposing projects so that we're all learning from each other and not just competing for the money as well.
Okay?
Thank you,
Dan?
Mr. Chair. Well, one of the reasons that I support some of the projects that I do, or the allocations that I recommend, have to do with just this. I've sat at this table and various seats around it, and I've listened to people here come and ask for more money to do different things. And then as legislators, when we ask, well, you tell us that you can't take care of what you got right now, and you want to get more of that, and how are you planning to take care of that? So when it comes to restoration and enhancement projects, you probably recognize that, those are things that I really value. And without a commitment to take care of what we have, what good does it do to acquire more if we're 10 years from now, it's not going to have been, quote, taken care of? So I think that it's important to recognize that if we're going to have this stuff, and in this case land or whatever, and we have a purpose in mind for what it's going to be, how do we keep that? And it's a good discussion to have, and that's why I support like the roving crews and stuff that the proposals come forward, because I do see that as an enhancement and maybe a restoration, however you want to. I'm more inclined to do that when you live where I live and you see the amount of public land that we have and how it could be managed better. That's why in many cases I'm not a big supporter of acquisitions, particularly in northern Minnesota. Thank you.
Okay. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've heard Ron Shar and myself go at it a little bit on the difference between prairie farmland restoration and the forests of northern Minnesota. It's kind of the whole idea. So what is restoration and management, and how does it affect our wildlife, which is a lot of what we're talking about here, and the prairie farm versus the forest, and of course a lot of it has to do with ownership. As Dan just said, it's there's a lot of there's a lot of public land that influences our forests and not so much with our prairies and our farms. But it seems like with the prairie and the farmland, we're talking about creating a new wildlife habitat or the types of things, and in the forests, we're trying to preserve. And it isn't like the turn of the 20th century, 19th to the 20th century, when all the trees were cut down here. We're talking about the serious management of forests so that they will produce the things that we want them to. And I just think we need to think about, again, creating versus preserving.
And my own sense of that is that you and Ron actually don't disagree,
Right.
but you're talking about geography. Where is it that we need to restore what's there and enhance what's there because it's not managed appropriately, and where are we in a deficit? Clearly, as you move north, there's more issue on the restoration side and the preservation or the enhancement side. And as you move south, you've got large areas where you don't have much habitat. And so it's going to be different in different places. And you're right, Ron is very passionate about we need more in the south. And you're very passionate about, take care of what we've got up north, because that's
Well,
your perspective.
yeah,
And they're
and-
not wrong.
No, I understand that too, but because it doesn't involve as much money, and, we all know corn's worth more than a popple tree. Because it doesn't involve as much money, the forest industry and the timber industry, for that matter, have voluntarily taken care of a lot of the needs of protecting water and that type of thing. It's much tougher for southern Minnesota to do that. I mean, it involves different types of money and amounts of money for sure. So anyway, if we hear that come up, I just think it's very important. We're starting to think even more about that in our northern Minnesota discussions on forestry. There's no question.
So is that a discussion item you would like to see us turn it around? It's an issue, but what would you like discussed, and how would you like the council to address that issue?
Well, I'd like to have our forest managers, we're roughly in northern Minnesota, third federal, third state, third county tax forfeit, which is held in trust. It's the state's lands. And then there's some large private tracts too.
Your math didn't work.
So what did I say, 25%
You
each
said a
one?
third for each,
Oh,
and you got to the.
Well, I did. So, but anyway, they're all land managers. They all do different things. But as less and less, the wood industry right now is in a state of transition. I mean, what we're going to be using that particular asset for is going to affect our forests probably in a positive way, because an old forest ends up with more disease, and it ends up it's just not as effective or healthy as it once was. So
Of course, it was old forest at one time.
it hasn't been old forest for quite a while.
But is that something you want us to
Yeah, I
discuss
do.
in some way?
Yeah, I'd
So
like
would
to
you-
hear,
are-
I'd like to hear from the managers. And I've been bugging the managers to, and I think our late chair was doing the same thing. We gotta, it's not the fault of the Outdoor Heritage Council that we aren't getting the projects that we should be from up there. It's that the projects frankly haven't been very good, so. And that's why I'm so happy to see the Upper Mississippi Headwaters Board come up with a good project in the northern forests. And
Okay. Other thoughts? Yeah, Mark.
Thinking more structurally, not so much about the projects, but, well, I guess it's projects, but how the work is being done. What I'm thinking about is the process that we have set in place, not the selection process, but I would like to hear from some of the groups, the organizations, what could we do differently structurally that could improve their work or planning? Now, for an example, and I know this doesn't necessarily work statutorily or legislatively, but if we could tell groups that we're going to make a commitment longer term, what would that do to them? In terms of how would they be able to look at their work, their partnership with others, and say, I mean, if we were to say a 3-year plan, a 3-year funding stream, or a 5-year funding stream towards something, how would that affect the quality of the work that they're doing and the concentration of the work that they're doing?
And the efficiency of the
And the
work.
efficiency of what they're doing.
Mark,
I
your
don't-
rating.
And like I said, I don't know if legislatively that works, because I understand you get the, you can't bind a future legislature. But we can, at least from a planning perspective, look out and make recommendations that we think we want to do, whether it's, let's get this forest stuff done and off the table. Let's work more concentrated in the Prairie area. And to do that, we're going to do a 5-year plan or a 5-year funding stream and dedicate theoretically X percent towards that. And I know you kind of do that now, but it's kind of, all the projects come in and then my history is right. Everything we just kind of sort out and plug in by region and.
I would, I think the discussion that Ron and I want us to have before we do the allocation process individually would allow, and I'm not saying this is all, because I think your concept of what we could do long-term is interesting, but we don't have the discussion about should we provide a 3 or 5-year funding to a roving crew. When the project comes in, we hear that, we hear testimony, we've got 20 minutes, and then we all make up our minds, and then we allocate something to it, and whatever they have is how many years they have, because we haven't had that discussion. They haven't had you saying, damn it, we ought to fund it for 5 years, because it would give them more comfort or efficiency or anything else. And that, I don't think it's a solution, but it's part of the solution to what you're talking about, that we actually have that discussion among ourselves.
Right, and I think that's a great example of the roving crews or the restoration work that needs to be done. How do they ramp up staff-wise? If they know it's only a 1-year or 2-year funding cycle. And then they gotta come back in and ask and come back in and ask, where if they knew that money was available, not necessarily that they got it, but available to them, that might make a difference. But, and so to take that further down the road, to bring in any of the groups, whether it's PF or the Conservancy or even the DNR, and just say, hey, if you had a big ask, that was a 5-year ask, what would that be? What would change the game for you out there? If you knew that we were gonna dedicate 500 million, or whatever it is,
Yeah,
towards something.
okay, let us work with that. Other thing?
somewhat disappointing theme at the last meeting and the accomplishment plans was the decrease in match. And we had some discussion about how that's approached by the different groups and how we could maybe make that a little bit more equal in terms of our evaluation. I know a lot of us put a lot of weight into the matching that is put into the proposals. And so if we could maybe revisit that, how it's approached, what that looks like for different groups, and possibly even make a request to groups on how they approach it and what they recommend to try and equal the playing field there.
Sort of the hard match versus the expected match.
Right.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, so maybe my memory's a little foggy, but, or I'm mixing up my commissions, I'm not sure, but it seems to me that this year, when we did the allocation, that the chairman's proposal came out and we passed it very quickly without the discussion you're talking about, but I don't think we did that in years past. It seems to me that the chairman's proposal came out and then we had a discussion about which ones to fund and why we should fund it. And so maybe this last year we were just being a little expeditious to get it done more quickly or something. But I think what I'm hearing you talk about is the way we've done it in the past. And maybe, I mean, you've been here longer than I have, so maybe you haven't done it that way. But I sort of remember us actually having the discussion about each project, and the trout streams, for example, were one of them that I totally remember us having a discussion about, and whether or not we're going to give them some money or not. So maybe this year was just one of these years we just thought, let's get it done.
Well, I think the piece that I have felt missing is the discussion after the hearings, but before we all do the allocation, so that I can frankly learn from what everyone else's perspective is about what they think. That we've never done really well. What we have done in the past, and this year was an aberration, there was only one project that fell below the line. And so the chair's proposal that Bob worked on and ultimately I passed on to everybody was because there was no fall off. There was no sort of slack in the numbers. And so the only amount that wasn't allocated was the amount that would have gone to that project had it been an equal division. And so there wasn't much to talk about because we were close enough in alignment that we didn't have that discussion. Years ago, before you were on the commission, when I was chair before, we actually held back, Sandy, maybe you remember, 20%, 25%, and the chair's proposal was to spend 75% of the money based on the voting, and then we had discussion and we went around the room and did allocation of the remaining 25% based on the discussion and the motions that each individual made, much as we're going to talk about later today that Ron and I have proposed, giving everybody an amount to recommend to the rest of the group and then frankly defend it. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes there were projects that someone recommended and we said no as a council. We didn't like that. We had a discussion and said, we don't think this one makes, for this reason, we don't support that. And that was really a positive discussion. And we've moved to a chair's proposal that tries to get to a consensus without discussion. And it is more, it gets us through it quicker, but it doesn't have the advantage of us having that discussion. And this year was incredibly unusual in that there was one small project that just didn't get above the line and all the rest did. So this year was unusual. Next year wouldn't be the same.
But the chair's proposal, Mr. Chair, is a starting point, and we can have the discussion based on the chair's, exactly what you want to do.
Yeah.
If we want to. But I look at the chair's proposal as a summation of how everybody voted, and here's kind of what you guys all said on your voting sheets, and this is the result, and we can change it from this if we want to, or we can pass it if we want to. And so I think we have the flexibility to do it, and I'm not sure that we need to have the discussion that we don't do it because we have done it in the past. And so I appreciate this discussion, but I think the flexibility is here for us to do whatever we want, however we want to do it. But what is your question about roads and trails that you have in your memo?
So we had discussion 3 years ago, Sandy? Mark? Because we had proposals that came in after the Mississippi Northwoods project. We started to ask about roads and trails, and it turns out we hadn't defined what a road and a trail was. Is it a path through the woods? Is it a paved path? Is it a vehicle path? And there's no definition when we're looking at a proposal for what is a road, what is a trail. We're charged with, as a primary, if you read the Constitution, we're about protecting habitat. So how many roads can you allow before you're not protecting the habitat? And what size of those roads and what kind of traffic? And Dan would say, access for hunters who are disabled is really important, but is it with vehicles? Is that for everybody, or is it just for people that are disabled? What's the rule that we want to go by to define what's acceptable on the property that we're protecting with money that's directed in the Constitution towards habitat? And it's about having a definition, because what we heard from the proposers is, we don't know what you mean. We're not sure. I remember Bowser saying, well, we need access to do restoration. Is that a road or trail? What is it? What's allowed? What's not allowed? And we've never given them the guidance for what we're expecting. And so they're always sort of wondering when the axe is going to fall, that they've crossed that line.
Well, so we're not talking about a proposer proposing a trail or a road. You're talking about what happens when there's a proposal that needs to have access and whether or not a trail or a road goes to it.
And what is the need? And
Maybe that's incumbent upon the proposer to come in and say, this is what I need in order to get there.
But we don't even have the consistent language when they propose to us for what it really is. That was what we heard from the proposers, is we don't know what your definition is. And this got us into hot water on Mississippi Northwoods, as Denny would remember, because we thought we knew what we had agreed to, and all of a sudden we discovered that meant different things to different people, and the interpretation was there, and it caused challenges we wish we didn't have. Denny, you can remember this better than I.
Well, and a lot of people at the table, including Commissioner Holston, would have a lot of knowledge about this in the past. I'm going to differ a little bit, Mr. Chair, on I don't think we have a problem. Mississippi Northwoods was an issue that was a county south of Highway 2 that has a policy similar to being north of Highway 2, in that trails are open unless marked closed. That's their Crow Wing County's policy. So we did Mississippi Northwoods with a network of trails already existing on it that would be open. That was the county forest proposal. And if you remember, at the last instance, DNR decided they didn't want Mississippi Northwoods, so the county stepped in and said, well, we would take it. And they have a county management, so it became a county forest. And a lot of the people on the commission at that time were like, oh my gosh, these trails will all be open and accessible. And they were ATV trails that existing hunting and fishing groups had used. So I think it was a learning experience for us, but I think the system, it actually worked. The county sat down, and I think they ended up agreeing to have 10 of the 25 miles of the trails open. I don't know that we need to define trails and roads. They're in statute, in rule, and I think the existing system works. We individually, some of us may like more, less access, and some may like more access, but we can weigh that in on the projects. I don't know that we need to get hung up on that, other than individually, we may want to allocate our allocations to what we think are more, not ones that allow. It's just, I think it's a different world, and I think we've done well in defining north of Highway 2. Representative Fabian and I live in different worlds. In northern Minnesota, and I hunt in northern Minnesota, but I live in southern Minnesota. It's a different world, and we see those trails differently, and we have to. When you've got that con land with thousands and thousands of acres, there's no way for the public to be able to utilize that good public land without access. So I don't know that we want to get involved in, if Mr. Chair, I think if we got in that discussion, it would never end. And we would have serious, I mean, I personally like no ATVs around where I hunt, and that's just my own personal feeling, but I respect, I hunt north of Highway 2, so if there's a trail there, somebody's going to buzz it. So, thank you.
Mark?
Mr. Chair and members, after the discussion 3-4 years ago, where we went quite in-depth into the trails, there was a change to the call for funding request that asked the question of the proposers, will there be trails on this property, or are there trails on this property, will there be trails on this property, et cetera. It doesn't ask for the dimensions or anything like that, but it asks for, are there going to be or will there be, what is the plan for those, why are they needed type thing. So that information is in, just that information is in each proposal with regards to if there will be trails.
And some of the feedback then was, what's your definition that you're asking for? Bowser, I remember asking that question, but Dan, you had a...
Well, and I think that, I think that the fact that that question was there, does that send a message to the proposers that the council doesn't want trails on these acquisitions and so forth?
Is it a qualifier?
No, I was looking for...
Is it a disqualifier? Is it a qualifier? So...
I can tell you exactly what we ask right now. Are there currently trails or roads on any of the acquisitions on the parcel list? Yes or no? Will new trails or roads be developed or improved as a result of the OHF acquisition? Yes or no? So it's information. It doesn't say, and part of the reason for that was with Mississippi Northwoods, there was an assumption about whether or not there were going to be trails or improved trails, and the information changed at the last minute because of the ownership change and the understanding of what was going to happen, which had been in the proposal, was different than what actually happened. And so we asked the question so that we had a record of what the intent was. And I don't think I've ever heard a discussion of disqualifying something because the answer is yes, but it is an information piece. But then we heard, what do you mean by trail and what do you mean by road? We haven't been specific in what that means. And that's where the question came up, in both Ron and mine.
I don't think I'd like to see, Mr. Chair, the council lose some flexibility on projects, whether or not that's a qualifier or disqualifier, take it on a case-by-case basis as far as the council is concerned. I think we have the ability to look into each one of those situations specifically and decide if we're going to do something or not. I also hate to miss out on a project because it has trails existing on it. I think there's been a lot of opportunities that I've seen, especially when it comes to northern Minnesota. I mean, it's a network of trails pretty much.
And we need more.
Well, I don't know Highway 2, maybe 210, but.
Yeah, I don't think this council's ever turned down a project because they've answered yes.
Right.
The question is, if you answer, no, I'm not going to develop trails, and then you put a network of trails in a piece that was intended to be something else, that's a different.
Yeah. Or they would have to, exactly, and I would say at that point in time, I think they'd have to come back to the council and look for some sort of exception to policy, something that we are getting something different in the Northwoods case than what we agreed upon.
Yeah.
Well, and Mr. Chair, you mentioned the mobility issue and handicap accessibility. And I've asked the the proposers, you know, what their, if you've been through the process of trying to gain access to a WMA on some sort of a mobility device, an ATV in this case, it is an amazingly complex and lengthy process. And members, I've said this before, we are doing a grave, we should be encouraging people who have legitimate mobility issues to be able to access that land, just like you and I can walking. To me, it is unconscionable that we have people coming here asking for taxpayer dollars, and we're going to exclude people because they can't walk. It's wrong. And we need to take a strong look at this, and we should be making some sort of a recommendation for further examination by the agencies and the legislature to figure out something that is more inclusive for people who have mobility issues. I feel very strongly about this, and I'd be willing to even make a motion right now, if someone wants to discuss it, to encourage the legislature and the DNR to come up with a policy that is easier for people to navigate through in order to be able to get onto a WMA, a WPA, waterfall production area. And I think that it's incumbent upon the proposers to know in the future that they need to have some sort of method for supporting accommodations for the people who would like to go along and can't.
So, first of all, I don't disagree with you in any way. I'm not sure it's our role as the council allocating these funds to be suggesting to the legislature what they do with their policies. But I'm happy to have I'm happy, assuming the council is, to use this as a forum to understand more about what the policies are. So as we're having these discussions about funding, we understand what we're doing and not doing and what the agencies allow and don't allow, so that we can have a discussion. I don't know myself. I've never had to apply for a permit to use a vehicle in a WMA. I just don't know, and I'm suspecting most of us don't, where you've got the experience of that. If the council would like, we can certainly bring some folks in and ask the questions so that we understand better as we're recommending money, what that might mean in terms of access for all people. Is that something the council would be willing to? I'm seeing some head nods, so we'll put that on our list to do, if that's all right with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the trails and roads piece, I'm just curious, do we know if there's any issue from the person writing the proposal? Is there any issue from their perspective with knowing what's even acceptable to put forward? Do they usually talk to staff as they're trying to figure out whether or not to even propose something? Because I could see that would be where even just having some clarifying language about how to move through that process might be helpful for somebody who's thinking like, we want to put forward this project, but we don't know if the council will accept a project with these kinds of trails or roads on it. So maybe, at least from the proposal side, there might be an option to just have some language so that it's a little bit clearer for somebody who's putting together a project for what we would even consider.
Mark, what's current practice?
Sure, Mr. Chair and members, the staff does get questions from proposers. Generally, it's not from the agencies or from people who proposed projects before, but from new proposers with regards to trails. And it might be, we're looking at we'd like to acquire an addition onto this county park, and we'd like to put a bike trail through it. Is that possible? In which case, we steer them that the bike trail would not be habitat. That's something that really should be, considered under other funds, et cetera. And even the footprint of that path, it's not habitat. So we try to just bring out what the council has mentioned before. Staff can fill in too some more if they have any other input on this. With regards to the proposers who've put in, DNR or the NGOs or agencies who put in proposals before, generally they're looking at what is their, for instance, if they're doing a WMA acquisition or restoration enhancements, then they've got procedures within and policy within their programs. So a lot of it gets taken care of already before it ever comes.
Jamie?
Specifically vague is a good thing.
If we're moving on to away from the
This
past
is a discussion.
past discussions, I wanted to bring up an issue, I think, moving forward. I think that we should be asking about whether any of the land that is going to be acquired has been a CWD positive property. Because as we have more and more positive facilities and kind of hot zones, I could see a situation where it might seem like, oh, this looked like great grouse habitat in Crow Wing County or whatever it is. And if we're not taking that into account, it's really protecting our investment. If we're going to be advising that folks hunt on this land and encouraging folks to do that, I think it's counterproductive and likely not a good use of funds for taxpayers and hunters if we're encouraging them to hunt in, some of those hot zones. So I'm not sure, how that would fit into the process, if we would, require some kind of notification of yes, no, of the knowledge, if we would be asking staff to do a little research, who would bear the burden of kind of bringing that information forward. But I think as we've got more positive areas popping up, I think we've got to start considering that when it comes to land acquisitions.
So this will show my lack of knowledge about the issue, but if you've got a hot spot, does that mean it's always a hot spot, or is that
I don't know if
just
you want to
don't
go down
know.
that road of discussion.
Okay,
So,
sorry,
well-
I withdraw the question.
Well, there are some things that aren't opinion. We know that it's a prion, and so a prion is a misfolded protein, and so it's different than a bacteria or a virus. And it's also, we know that it can sustain in the environment longer than a lot of other diseases. Similar to mad cow and some of those types of diseases. And so, there's discussion. There is more research now about the kinds of soil and things that might hold it, be better for it. But, we do know that it persists in the environment even after the animals are gone.
So it might be interesting to have someone come in and talk about that. Okay.
That's fine. We're ready to move on. I just wanted to go back and revisit the trail, because I thought I understood it, and now I'm confused. So if we're done with the CWD.
Yep, I think we're done.
Because I understood it to be just a question out there, an information gathering thing, and that was it. But now I'm starting to get the sense that there's confusion externally with it because of just the question. And now thought I heard Mark say that proposers coming in, talking to staff, may have been directed because there were trails to different funding sources and projects may not have come. Or did I hear that wrong?
I think if someone wants to do a bike trail, he's saying we're not in the bike trail business. If someone wants to propose a project that has a paved bike trail through it, he's probably warning them that that's, based on history, probably not what we consider habitat. But if someone wants to have I got that right, Mark? So what I'd like to do, with your permission, is to bring in some people who have questions about how we have defined and talked about trails to talk to us about that, so we understand what the discussion should be that we even have. I don't want to propose anything. I'm looking for, is there something we should do to help our process and our proposers understand what it is that we find acceptable and unacceptable? And what does that question mean to them? Because I'm not against all trails and all roads, but I am, you know, I have a place on the spectrum of what's acceptable that's probably different than yours. And collectively, we can get to a place, I think, where we can help everyone understand what the council's place on that spectrum is, so there isn't the confusion as people come in, wondering what's okay and what's not, and so that staff has direction as to how to advise people.
Mr. Chair, members, if I may, just to make sure everybody understands, whenever we get somebody coming in with questions for us, a new proposer or existing, we try to view our role as staff as being, as we're there to help people be successful, the proposers, as well as we're there to represent, as much as we can, the council's wishes. So whenever somebody asks a question, we don't say, absolutely not, you can't do that. What we generally do is say, you know, by law, that's unacceptable, or the council has viewed that as unacceptable. With regards to trails, what we're saying is, here's what the council has looked at in the past. Our view is that the council may not look may not look positively upon this aspect of your proposal, so you may want to think of how you would rework that. But if you want to come before the council with that proposal, that's okay too. So we're not trying to cut things out before, we're just trying to help people avoid some of the potential pitfalls or potential rough spots.
I'm getting the sense, though, that this has become a qualifier, non-qualifier type thing out there.
I don't know that it has at all, and I don't think, we've funded many projects, Sandy's shaking her head, but I think we've funded many projects that have answered yes to those questions, but it's allowed us to understand what they're proposing.
Yeah, no, I understand that, I'm saying from the perspective of the askers, there's this thing out there, this thing out there about roads or trails, and I guess from a land management perspective, that's a fluid thing. They're gonna come, they're gonna go, and it just seems like this is a stress that's been created that we don't necessarily need to be involved in as a council.
Sandy, you were going to say something.
A good example that comes to mind regarding this discussion is the Lake Bemidji project. They came to us, it was a big undertaking that was part recreational aspects too, which was a walking trail or bike trail along the lake. Part of it was restoring the lake. So we had a discussion with them and they came to us and we said, clearly the restoration of the lake and the dredging would be part of what we would fund, but this overall recreational part probably isn't going to be funded by the council, not that it's not a good part of your project. So then they pursued other funding for that trail, but they included it in the proposal as kind of a match to their overall project details, and then we picked up, the Outdoor Heritage Council picked up part of that project. So that's just a good example that comes to mind.
Denny, and then we're going to move on to...
With Councilmember Holston would agree that I don't know that we want to get into the intricacies of the trail issue, but it might be good for us to understand what the current law is. Trails and roads are defined And I think having somebody come in to let us know how it works, there's a place in the state that's different by law, and the county forest can be different. I think our questions, and then maybe we would redefine the questions. I'm not sure roads and trails should be lumped in one sentence, because I can just envision somebody that's going to propose to purchase a new WMA in southern Minnesota, maybe on both sides of the road. Now, have we said there's roads within the project? I would say it's not. I would say they're buying maybe an 80 on this side and an 80 on that side of the road. A question as far as roads might be better, is there any plan to put new roads in the property, within the property? Are there any plans to put new trails within the property? That might be all we really need to know if we understood what the law is. If we're buying some land, we bought the first big project we ever did, 187,000 acres of land and property. That's got trails everywhere within it, and we bought it knowing that. But it wasn't a discussion really point. So I think it might be good to have somebody come in, but the roads thing, I could understand where somebody, we might think they answered it wrong. Our really question is, do you plan on blowing any new trails in there? Or do you put, would you put any new trails or put any new roads in? That might, I mean, some of us might like that idea. If they didn't, some might think, well, I don't want that.
So-
And the trail would be something that, it's different than if it's the whole discussion in Northwoods was there going to be a 12-foot blacktop trail going down the middle of a deer hunting area? Never a discussion about the 25 existing miles of trail. So it was, we had two separate
So
discussions there.
the fact that we're having this discussion indicates it probably is worth figuring out how to have an intelligent discussion about this. So let Ron and I work with staff to figure out how we have a reasonable discussion about this to get us to a better place, because there is confusion in our own minds as well then as the proposers. We're going to move on to our 9 o'clock presentation. Thank you for this discussion. We're going to take these suggestions and any others that you may send our way and try to develop an agenda this year. It may involve an extra meeting or two that would allow us to get into some of these issues that we have not had time to get to in the past. So thank you so much for the input. And with that, following up discussions that we have had about restoration of trout streams and what works and doesn't work, we have today a presentation by Mike Osterholm, who knows a lot about this because he's both done it well and not so well. I think not so well first and then well. I had the distinct privilege of being able to go down to property he restored in very northeast Iowa this fall. An amazing restoration. I will say you've spent more on prairie plants seed than I have ever seen on a restoration, and it was difficult, as those that were with me know. Walking through it in shorts was not fun because it was so thick. But he's done an amazing restoration, and we've asked him to come in and give just another view of how to do and what works and doesn't work with restoration. So we appreciate you coming in, Mike, and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to be here with the council today. Executive Director Johnson for allowing me to be here. Let me just say at the outset, I was trying to count up the number of times I've sat at this desk during my 45-year career here, and I think it's about 275 times I've been here at this desk. This is the first time I've ever talked about something that wasn't an infectious disease, although, Representative, you were getting close with chronic wasting. So I'm here today to talk about a scientist who accidentally also happened to be an outdoorsman and who happened to get hooked into the restoration bug many years ago, and hopefully lessons learned. Also during this time, I've had to come to grips with what is classic climate change related precipitation events in this state and what that means for restoration events, and I'll show you the data today to address that. So what I'm really here to do is tell you a story that is part science, part data, and also part just practical experience. And I hope that it can be used as an example of maybe the way we've always done things aren't necessarily the best way, but what do we have left to learn to do them more cost effectively and to hold up against the issue of the changing climate. Before I begin, I just have to say that all great wisdom has some place to come from. This is my dog Max, an Australian Shepherd, who was smarter than I was, who spent 13 years with me on this property. And sad to say that the day before he suddenly died, we had one of our burns, and he was there on the property having the best day of his life. And the next day, an unknown tumor in his liver ruptured, and he died suddenly. So, but this was my co-partner in crime, to the point of where there was one night where I fished far too late because the fishing was so good. There were no lights in this valley, as Chairman Hartwell can tell you. It's very isolated, and I literally I couldn't see to get home. There was no moon. I actually had to follow my dog home. He was that smart. He knew how to get home to where we were going. Well, first of all, let me start out with a little bit of a maybe you call it geology history lesson, and this may seem as if it's something you know, but I think I may surprise you a little bit with understanding how unique the southeast Minnesota area is and why it's so important to understand it. I will tell you right now, Minnesota is a sum of its parts, and in many cases the parts are not interchangeable, and yet we often try to apply policies for the whole state, and this is a classic example. The driftless area, which got its name, meaning there was no glacial drift pushed forward of it, is in southeastern Wisconsin, northeastern Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, and northwest Illinois. It comprises between 16,000 and 24,000 square miles. Karst, a term that came out of Slovenia in the 1600s, borrowed from us and from Germany in the 1800s, is referring to topography where there previously had been oceans that deposited sand or limestone that today have very porous and, in many cases, very dynamic water movement in the underground area. In this case, karst topography resulted from the area being spared the most recent glacier, the Wisconsin Glacier, that ended about 11,000 years ago, and millions of years of precipitation-driven erosion and dissolution of limestone and dolomite. And you'll see later how dramatic that is, unlike any other area in the state. It's one of the world's highest concentrations of limestone spring streams, with more than 600 cold water streams and more than 3,600 miles of water. This is the driftless area as we know it today. You can see the large segment from the Twin Cities southward all the way to Madison, up towards Eau Claire, and down a little past Dubuque, Iowa. This is what people often think of when they think of the driftless area, the trees, the rivers, and so forth. This is hardly what this area was like for the 10,000 years before this. And in fact, when one looks at the streams and these locations, and I'll point out in a moment, I'm actually, and I don't have a pointer here, I think, other than this, if you can see, this is the Iowa-Minnesota border, the Mississippi River. The property I'm going to be talking about today is right here, just south of the Minnesota border. Now, it's important to understand, in part, when we talk about this area, because, first of all, it's an amazing water resource. It's been estimated that there's actually more water in the groundwater of southeastern Minnesota than all the rest of the surface water in the state of Minnesota, to give you some sense of the dynamic nature. And what you see here is, in fact, the different oceans that came and went and left limestone, sandstone formations. And in this case, about 450 million years ago, the St. Peter sandstone was laid down, a very important source of water for a number of communities around the state. And then we get into some intermediate areas, the Decorah Shale, and then up into the Galena limestone, which was about 450 million years ago, also right in here. The property that I owned was basically concluded Galena all the way down into St. Peter. And you'll see in a minute what dynamic that is. What you may not know is that this is the overlay of the tallgrass prairies, the historic tallgrass prairies. To the west of it was the shortgrass prairies. To the east of it were the oak savannas and eventually the eastern forest. Why is this important? Because we can't go back and reproduce history as we might want to, but the soils that were deposited over the last 7,000 years from these tallgrass prairies pose very unique challenges for restoration work that we haven't understood. This is one that I find is a factoid most Minnesotans have no idea. There are lots of places in the world that have karst, limestone, dolomite type environments. There are lots of places that have prairies or steppes, Australia, Europe, Russia. There is no place in the world except for the driftless area that actually was the overlay of karst topography and historic tall grass prairies. So the unique nature here, I'll come back to that, and I'm not trying to reproduce this, but if we're going to actually work with stream restoration, we got to know our history, because it actually will dictate in part what works and doesn't work. And so this is very unique. I mean, the Amazon's not unique compared to other rainforests in the world. This is a very unique area that we see here with the overlap of the tall grass prairies and the driftless area. Also, to add to the trifecta, it was the one place in all of North America where you had driftless, you had tall grass prairies, and you had the native brook trout. See how the native brook trout, actually the range for that reaches down into eastern Minnesota, down into northeastern Iowa and Wisconsin. And so these three really make this such a very unique place in the world that most people haven't realized. This is the beautiful brook trout. I'll come back to that. That is the native trout that we had prior to settlement and before we brought brown trout and rainbow trout into the area. This was the only native brook trout. Now let me just say, I'm going to do a very brief history for you because it actually does bear on modern restoration. The pre-1850 settlement goes back 6,000 years or more when the tall grass prairies really got started. That's what the world was like up until 1850. From then to the 1930s, we saw some of the most dramatic changes in land use anywhere in the world, including what we're seeing today in the burning of the rainforest. This was a dramatic land change use, and not to say good, bad, or indifferent, but we have to understand what it meant. Then we got into the 1930s and 70s where we started to understand a bit more about conservation practices, land use practices, and frankly, Mother Nature took over from what we had done in the previous 100 years. And then from the 1970s today, and where are we going for the future? Well, first of all, let me just share with you what this used to be like. This is actually a screenshot from the 1830s from the mouth of the Wisconsin River right at the Mississippi River, just south of the Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin border. Notice there, you'll see very few trees. This is actually the Mississippi River just south of La Crosse, where you'll actually see in these 1830 lithographs, again, very few trees. This is Fort Snelling in the 1840s, where if you look hard and fast, you'll see very few trees. Today, this is the area we think of the driftless area, where we have tremendous woods, trees, growth. We think of this as the natural status of the driftless area. Again, another shot here. This is a lithograph at Decorah, Iowa, a town about 14 miles southwest of the property that I'll talk about today. Again, look at this from a lithograph of 1851. Very few trees. Today, it's mostly trees. Well, what happened? Well, we had very few trees here. Even in this Minneapolis-St. Paul area, very few. That's where Eden Prairie got its name, et cetera, et cetera. My little hometown of Waukon, Iowa, the county seat of Elmwood County, the far northeastern county, the early settlers talked about the oak forest that existed. There were 3 oak trees near a spring. That was the oak forest that existed at that time in the 1850s. Why was that? Because the Native Americans were the masters of fire and the use of fire. And this area burnt consistently throughout all of history, at least the 6,000 years, and what also gave us the tall grass prairies, because they are uniquely situated for fire, and I'll come back to that. So for the purposes, first of all, of bringing back the large animals, the elk, even the caribou, et cetera, were drawn back into areas that had recently been burnt because of the lush growth that occurred. So they used that actually for hunting purposes. Number 2, they used it for protection, because these tall grass prairie fires were so dramatic. If you want to go back and read some of the most horrible stories, go back and read. And there are a number of them here in Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, wagon trains that got caught up in a prairie fire that outran them, and 48 of the 50 wagons were literally burnt, the horses and people included, and only 2 made it to a stream where they were able to plunge the thing there because the fires burnt them. So the Native Americans burnt frequently where they lived, around them to keep the growth low so that in fact that they didn't have these big fires. And the third method was they used it for war. Go look at down the Mississippi River. Go look at the Sac Fox River Park in Wisconsin, just across from the Minnesota border, where they actually literally drove the Fox Indians off a cliff one night by fire in a war that they had. And so fire was common. Many of them were man-started, but they were also naturally occurring. Sometimes they would literally burn for thousands of miles. And if you've ever been around a prairie fire, you know how intense this can be. Flames shooting 40 or 50 feet tall. Mr. Chairman, you know it well. You've done it. And so this is what we were there. Let me give you some sense of this. This is a quote from J.C. Beltrami in 1823. J.C. Beltrami was a colorful Italian explorer who was a lead guide for Lewis and Clark, a very charismatic, colorful man. He was on the very first steamboat that tried to make it from Fort Rock Island to Fort Snelling on a summer night at 1823. And he wrote the following description. Once a year, the Indians set fire to the brushwood so that the surface of the vast regions they traversed is successfully consumed by the flames. It was dark, and we were at the mouth of the River Yuaha. That is right at the Iowa-Minnesota border, the Upper Iowa River. When we saw at a distance all the images of the infernal regions, the few trees were on fire, which communicated to the grass and brushwood and was blown by a violent northwest wind to the plains and valleys. The flames towering above the hills gave them the appearance of volcanoes, and the fire winding in its descent through places covered with grasses exhibited a resemblance to the undulating lava of Vesuvius. The fire accompanied us for some variation for 15 miles. They went by firelight that night to what is now La Crosse, Wisconsin. That happened all the time, and notice very few trees, etc. Well, why is that important? Because again, when we do our restoration work, if we don't understand the historic nature of the soils and the geology, and we try to do what they do in northeastern Wisconsin or they do in the sand streams of eastern Wisconsin, whatever, we're going to see that basically we have some challenges. This is what tallgrass prairies look like. It's the only plant species in the world that actually grows basically from the ground up, not from the tip up. So, in fact, it's very unique. The vast majority of its energy is stored underground. That's where all these black prairie soils came from. It was carbon deposition. When one looks at this, you can get a sense of the root structure. These you see going down to 10 feet. Under 1 cubic yard of big blue stem grass, so 1 yard by 1 yard by 1 yard, is over 10 miles of rootlets and root hairs. That's why the very first farmers couldn't farm in the upper Midwest, because they had no plows, wooden plows that would tear that up. They lost their plow. It wasn't until the sodbusters, the very first steel plows came to the upper Midwest, could they farm that area, because that extensive root nature that provided that kind of situation. Then in addition, where we did have trees most often were oak savannas, which oak trees were uniquely built, you might say, for the fire regions of prairies. For reasons we don't even still understand today, a bur oak under a very, very dry spring as a newly formed tree will not grow at an inch. It'll put roots down, keep putting roots down until it gets a wet spring, sometimes 3 or 4 years later, and it'll go quickly 6 to 8 feet up within the next 2 years, right through the fire range. The cambium is very thick against fire. So this actually was a tree that needs lots of light, and it needs fire, in a sense, to maintain that brush-free environment, so it gets that. That's oak savannas. Why is that important? Again, you're going to see in a minute, it has everything to do with runoff and what we can expect with our streams in the driftless area. Now, if you look at the issue of oak savanna like this, and you look at the loss of water off the area, the 2017 woodlands actually have very little recharge, very little recharge. All those trees we now see down there, why? Because if you look at the bottom of those, there's almost nothing growing. It's shaded out. And if it is growing, it's garlic mustard or buckthorn. And so what happens when the water actually hits that, it actually is like almost concrete, and the water pours off the hills. This has meant that we have major runoff issues. So the runoff today in these hilly regions of the driftless area is dramatically different than it was 150 years ago. With oak savannas, which often were on the hillsides, you actually had some recharge, but again, because of the prairies, one of the ways prairies survive is very high levels of evapotranspiration. So that's what they do. They give a lot of water off. And so in this case, basically oak savannas, they put a lot of water into the air, but they also did recharge some, very, very little runoff. Oak tallgrass prairies had almost no runoff. Again, only limited recharge because of the fact that the evapotranspiration, which is part of prairie plants, is so high that they give off moisture. Today we often hear about corn and bean fields adding to the humidity of our area. Quite honestly, they actually are much, much less likely to put moisture into the air than were the prairie plants. So when we look at this, you actually get more recharge. You get it because it goes down when it happens, but it's also much, much more prone to runoff. So you get both with that kind of thing. Not knowing that and watching the maturation of the wood structure of the southeastern Minnesota area means you have to understand this, because today the potential for flashy runoff is unlike any time in the last 8,000 years. So it's not just more precipitation, but when it occurs, it is much more likely to be flashy runoff precipitation. Now, what happened here was we did get the first steel plows that came in. They started plowing away. And with that, because of many of our ancestral settlers here who came from areas where they had low rainfall or clay-like soils, they didn't realize what happens to prairie soils when you get a little bit of erosion. This is a slide from near Viroqua, Wisconsin, in the driftless area after 30 years of runoff. This is another slide just across the Minnesota-Wisconsin border here near Lake Pepin. Again, you can see all that soil washed down into these streams, much like if a coal mine slag just broke loose and went down into the valleys. That happened over 30 to 40 years. Also, grazing was dramatic in the sense that basically areas were grazed down because in, again, other areas of the world that our settlers came from, Scandinavia, et cetera, these were suitable practices based on the soil types and the geology. They didn't cause the problems. This is work done by the late Jim Knox from the University of Wisconsin and Faith Fitzpatrick from the USGS. This really, I think, tells an amazing story. Halfway Creek Overbank is a stream that runs into the Mississippi just north of La Crosse. It's on the Wisconsin side. And if you actually look at what they've been able to go back and establish is the actual sedimentation per tons per year in Halfway Creek that washed into the creek and down through it. Look at what you can see happen from 1890 to 1930. It was dramatic. Many of these streams were literally choked off with 5 to 15 feet of silt on top of what used to be the stream bank. And now it all poured down. Amazing event in just 40 to 50 years to see what happened. And this was a legacy issue that we're now still dealing with. And this is true. Halfway Creek was no different than most streams in the driftless area. Also, with that came the extirpation of largely the native brook trout as we know it. This is from an article from the Decorah Republican on June 8th, 1893, northeast Iowa. Charlie Stiles caught maybe the largest trout ever from a stream in the area trout run. It was the only trout taken from the stream in years and very likely to be the last one. When all the silt came down, it basically eliminated all the spawning areas. There were no rock, no limestone rock left. It was all covered with silt, and I'll show you that. And today, when we have seen the restoration of, in many cases, naturally producing trout, frankly, it's had very little to do in many cases with anything we've done. It's the fact that after 80 to 100 years, the water has finally worn its way back down and moved enough of that silt out that came down from the bedrock that was already there. And that's what's brought back much of the natural reproduction, not our own conservation work, which we'd like to say did. We surely have done some things, but not that much. In the 1930s, we've had our first real emphasis on conservation. This is in Coon Valley, Wisconsin, where the CCC set up first big programs in this area. We begin to take on agricultural farming practices that changed the idea of what happens with erosion. The problem was most of the topsoil was already down from that time. And then we went in and did stream restoration. You know, you see a hill there. We know what to do with it. Just block it up with rock. And we did so many of those kinds of things like that because we just didn't want that to erode, not really understanding what that did or didn't do. But we also continued many of our practices, and today they are still numerous, unfortunately, of where we have situations like this where there is a real tension between, in many cases, agriculture and the quality of the water in these streams from situations just like this. This is a shot that gives you some sense of what I'm talking about with the soils. I can tell you that in the excavation work we did on the property, I'm going to show you in a moment, we could actually layer out by history. When we dug into it, we could find the kinds of items such as old shoes from the 1930s to pieces of farming equipment from 1910 down to actually pots that were made in the 1870s. And it was all washed in, all buried with this, and this is what is disclosing. Now what's happened is this very shot used to be one where the silt was much, much thicker in that riffle you see. But eventually time, water, gravity, movement washed that out. But now what's happening is the banks are sloughing back in. Work that was done at the St. Croix Research Station here in Minnesota and applied down here using radioisotopes show that almost 90% of all the silt in a given hole is actually silt coming out from the walls of that hole. And then every time a major flood comes, it washes it down and out. You get some cleaning. but basically it's kind of this movement of just sweeping it downstream over time. One of the challenges we have, and this is where the scientific hat of mine will come on, is I have to tell you one of the most frustrating experiences I have is when we bring somebody in here to Minnesota to tell us how to do stream restoration from Montana. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. Because in fact, the land that we are restoring, mountains are not what we're dealing with here. And so many of the practices that have been used as cookie cutter practices, this is the way you do it. You build a highway this way, you build a highway this way, you build a bridge this way, you build a bridge this way. It has to be very different. And in fact, I would even say Bob Hunt from Wisconsin, who is an icon in the area of stream restoration work, did incredible work in Wisconsin, stream salt therapy. He did it all in the eastern sand streams of eastern Wisconsin. I'll tell you right now, you want to watch what happens on a beach when you build a sand castle, get a little water where it all collapses on itself. You have that same pressure in prairie soils, it blows it all out, they're gone. There's no relationship between the two. And part of the problem is we haven't understood that. So we often apply practices from totally different soil types, geology regions, and then try to apply them here. And I was just as guilty early on in our early work. So today, stream restoration management books, guides, and articles, they tend to approach stream restoration as a cookie-cutter activity. The NRCS is one of the worst in the world at that. In an NCRS project through the USDA, I don't care if you're in Ohio, Minnesota, California, Florida, or Maine, you do them the same way. That's just not the right way we have to do it, and you need to look at these carefully. There's no distinction between ecosystems, but rather on such things as streams affected by agriculture, loss of forests, mining, and urban growth. There's a big difference between the sand streams of eastern Wisconsin, the mountain streams of Montana, the karst streams of Pennsylvania, and even the driftless area of the Midwest. Pennsylvania, which doesn't have the same kind of soil types and karst, are very different than trying to deal with it here. This slide just reminds me, I actually got involved with this business as a high school, college student. I spent, unfortunately, far too much time in caves of southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa, exploring these limestone streams back forward. Was involved with the discovery of several of the major cave systems down there. So I've had a long time love being from northeast Iowa in the streams, what happens to them, where they go, what goes on. So it was that I actually bought a property that I had fished on as a child, and in my later years in 2002, located in Elmkey County, Iowa, as I mentioned, the far northeastern county of Iowa, had 97 acres of both bottomland and wooded hillsides and uplands. It's the only driftless property in Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois that has 3 different trout streams on it. Waterloo Creek, which starts in Minnesota, near Spring Grove, Minnesota. I had 2,700 feet of that. Duck Creek, which actually started near Eitzen, Minnesota, again another Minnesota stream. And then one, Brook Creek, which actually is a stream that started right on the property as a large St. Peter sandstone spring, and a stream that we reestablished back to its original location after it had been ditched for more than 40 years. And I began a major restoration project back in 2003. Let me just start at the outset by saying I had no idea what I didn't know, and I made lots and lots of mistakes. I will just say right up front, I've spent well over $1 million of my own money working on this project. And fortunately, because I spent my own money, basically I could put things in and tear them out. By the 3rd year of doing the work on the property, the Army Corps of Engineers finally said, you don't need to come back to us for any more permits. All you're doing is taking stuff out. So actually, for the next 15 years, basically, I just had a laboratory in front of me and worked accordingly. The property had large, moderate streams, small spring streams, wetlands, brook, bottomland prairie, oak savanna. Well, I did an entire oak savanna prairie restoration. Let me just say I'm concentrating today on what is about stream restoration, because you don't have to do an entire restoration of prairie and oak savanna to actually do very different and successful stream restoration. This is the property that you'll see in the green lines there. I want to point out that there's one area here. This is an old stream. This is the Brook Creek stream. The spring started right here, and it was ditched in 1941 over here. I've reestablished that back. And just to show you what this looked like at one time with the heavy forest. One of the things that also is dramatic down there that people have to understand, this is, again, if you look here, this is the property. The top of the property was at 1,130 feet. The bottom was at 830 feet. 300-foot drop on 100 acres. And from my property to New Orleans was 830 feet. So it gives you a sense of just also the kinds of dynamics we're dealing with runoff that occur in areas like that. That's why what happens with the woods and the water are very important. This is what the property looked like in an aerial in 1941. You can still see that what I call Brook Creek today still flowed down here. This is the stream as we know it. Look at the sparse trees relative to in this area here and here, reminding you that it had been about 100 years since fire had burnt through this area. And so there was starting to be a regrowth beyond all this large oak area right here.
Mike?
Mike?
Yeah.
We aren't able to see the cursor, so if when you say here and
Okay.
here, you could just,
Yeah, sorry.
thank you.
Can you hear me if I'm not on the microphone? Okay, I would just say, this area here is the oak forest area, oak savanna area, and the area up there, if there's a by a road, you'll see an outline of what was a stream at that point that was still running. This is what it looked like in 2002. Look at the difference in just 60 years. What happened was, with the growth of all these other deciduous trees, and including such things as buckthorn, you can see how it changed dramatically. The stream no longer flows through the cornfield, and now this is all filling in somewhat dramatically. And this is what's happened in the driftless area. The woods you see today in the driftless area were not the woods that were there 50 years ago, and surely not there 100 years ago. When you look at today, this is an aerial from several years ago. I've built a home on the property. You now see Brook Creek, the stream that runs up here, but this is the main stream, Waterloo Creek. Duck Creek comes in up at that corner. Here, that is a stream that's actually landlocked for 3.5 miles above this area. A very pristine stream-like area. When I bought the property, it was clear that this had been prairie and oak savanna. There were a number of bottomland plants that still persisted despite the damage that had occurred with all the silt and soil coming down, and the upland was clearly had at one time been a major oak savanna area. This is what it looked like when I bought it. Lots of reed canary grass, lots of trees in there. To many, that seemed to be what the wild nature of this area would look like. In fact, it was hardly that at all. Lots of trees in the property, cornfields, trees like that. This is an old oxbow here with a cornfield. This is an area here, Duck Creek, where I showed you it came in at the road in the far northeastern part, upper right-hand side of the stream. I just want to point out to you that this area, which was several 1,800 feet, basically, I walked through this once with a dear friend of mine after I first bought it. He was a Vietnam War veteran, and we got done walking, looked at me and said, you know, I haven't been in stuff like this since Nam. It was this thick buckthorn and the kind of invasive activity you see. The stream bottom was totally sand. There was nothing of any real nature living in it, sand and soil. This is a stream here where was one of the more interesting challenges of my personal and professional career. Some of you may know I'm a former English Channel swimmer. I like to think that I'm pretty capable of swimming in almost anything, 10-foot high seas, etc. I almost drowned in this hole. What happened was it was only a couple feet deep, and I went to walk across it in my hip waders to look at the other side, and I sunk up into mud up above my chest, and I was sinking. Even though it was only 2 feet deep, I was going under. And it literally took me a half an hour of trying to wiggle out of my waders, which are still in that stream somewhere, that I could finally get out of this hole. And literally, it was all, that was silt, straight down, that was my weight, I just sunk right down in. So that gives you an idea of that, and the silt coming off of that wall is an example. I also want you to remember this little area you see right in front of you here, the kind of dirt, mud right in front, because we're going to come back to that in a moment too. Many of the areas had this kind of banks where, again, the silt just kept sloughing off, going back into the stream, flood after flood, storm after storm. This is the kind of bank also that was a major heat sink for the water, warming up the water. This is a south-facing bank. We did a number of thermal studies on the property over the time, and on a hot day, the heat, the sun would hit that bank, warm that bank up to 110 degrees or more, and that was right there with the water. It was a major way to warm up the water. And then the silt right below it, when the water was only 6 to 10 inches deep, the light would penetrate enough to be absorbed in the dark bottom and warm up the water again. So again, this silt-like material is a big problem. We saw lots of activity like this where, again, it looked nice, but the banks just kept caving in. One of the residual problems I had, we had 47 car bodies on the property. They had been used as the classic way to handle a stream bank eroding, and we had to take all of those out as part of this. When one looks at this picture, you might say, boy, that's really a good-looking piece of property. You forget about the reed canary grass settry. You know, this is the wild. This is north, okay? But when you take all the trees down, which we did, we ended up taking over 8,000 trees down on the property, you'll see this is what it looked like. This is the next corner right here. And where this gentleman is standing is basically at the bottom of that picture. When you look at behind the bank and what was being covered, you see all those black banks. Then if you take the next look, right to the, just below where he is downstream, this shot was taken there. Look at that bottom. It's 100% silt, all silt. Just absorbing heat, not growing any aquatic insects. What responsible, respectable fish would want to live there? And then on top of it, you see that tree there that had been cut off. Trees along trout streams in the driftless area are an absolute disaster. People think that they actually have a lot to do with cooling the water with shade. Quite to the contrary. Up north in the Lake Superior region for trout streams, trees are critical. In the mountains, they're critical. But down here, what happens is the water gets behind these root structures during high water events. And it's classic hydraulic flow. As it works in its way into the root, it gets further and further. The tighter it gets, the more it blows out. And these just constantly blow out, these tree issues like this. Then it's all black soils again, which then just leachate in. So the worst thing you could do is have a tree on a trout stream in the driftless area, which is so counterintuitive to what you'd think of with almost any other area where we do trout stream work. We also, on the top of the property, use the geologic structure there. It was really remarkable. So in 2003, I began a major effort down there. Other than the little work we did on Brook Creek, it was self-funded. I did traditional approaches using the NRCS, DNR, and TU methods of the time. It was kind of the whole idea of basically taking a hole and rocking it, et cetera, and you'll see more in a moment. But then over time, I started doing more soft armor, grading the banks, trying to reestablish floodplains, and to get basically the prairie plant root structures to help me out. Because again, if you blow out rocks or you blow out wood, it's gone. If you hit a prairie plant root structure, it just grows more. And so one of the challenges was that. So we planted with cover crops. We aggressively attacked reed canary grass, which is in coir logs. I'll show you what that looks like. And then we did this from 2005 onward. As I said, we cut down more, literally thousands of trees on the property. Most of them were small scrub trees, et cetera. We burnt those. We went after the reed canary grass. And we did the classic kind of, at that time, stream restoration work of the 2004 time period. Made sure those banks weren't going to leak in anymore. We put lots of rock in there. Let me tell you, I can tell you the exact price, what it cost to bring 22 semi-loads of rock in. I can tell you it's a hell of a lot more to take out 22 loads of rock, which I did that too 3 years later. So again, these were all experiments in action. And so what you see here is basically we made a great canal with this rock and did the work. This is what it looked like after we got done. I'll just show you right now that gives you an idea of how high those banks were. The two gentlemen in the water are both over 6 feet tall. Gives you some sense basically of what we did. We put coir on the surface thinking this would help with it. We put in the classic kind of fish hides, sky hooks, lenticles in a number of areas here, including this hole, which I showed you earlier that I almost bit the dust. And put those in, rock that in, and again, high banks with lots of rock, and there we had it. We also, though, however, did some additional work. We thought, well, we'll just trim back the banks a bit, plant the prairie grasses into them, not thinking necessarily the next flood event could be tomorrow, and what would that mean? Well, so if you look straight up above there at the far as you can see upstream, that is a big bank in there that at the time, that was about a 1.5 to 2 feet deep, lots of silt, and we wouldn't trim that bank back, and then we planted prairie into it and coir over it. Thought, well, this would be a great way to kind of stabilize this bank. Well, lo and behold, 1 year later we had a major flood, and that's what the bank looked like after that major flood. Blew it all out, the water came up right over it and took that out. So this was part of a larger effort. We began to think about, well, you know, we just need to restore the floodplain and let these major events dissipate their energy so they don't blow out these streams, they don't cause these kinds of problems. So that's exactly what I did. Besides, we began to take the property down. We took the soils off, which, by the way, I had no problem getting rid of this black dirt to the neighbor farmers around nearby. They were very happy to receive it. My only request was that they made sure they kept it on their farm this time. So this is what happened. Notice that hole on the left. You can see it's very shallow. It's only about 12 to 18, 20 inches deep, all silt in there. Well, that's what this looked like 2 years later. And we did realize that we still had some erosion at the toe of that hole because the water activity was reacting faster than the root structures could grow with the plants. So we actually did put some rock in, but very limited rocking. That hole today is now about 14 feet deep. And all because the action of the floods just continued without taking the banks out, just washing out, and washing out the silt that was already in there. Same thing here. Remember that hole I showed you before? Went in, did the same kind of work there, where the water action was up against the bank, like if you look at the bucket of the front end loader there, the Caterpillar, we actually did put a limited amount of rock there. You'll see it in the next shot or two. Went in and did the hole like this very same hole. Remember this one? That's what this looked like 4 years later. Notice the rock just to the left of the fisherman there up against that bank. All the silt has washed out now. No more is coming back in. And I'll show you some shots later in a moment that will give you some sense of just how rich the fishing experience was here. And this is what the prairie plants look like. Remember this hole here. And I often hear, and one of the things you're going to hear from me today as a scientist is I've become almost anti-engineering. We engineer projects to the point of killing them. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And we spend a hell of a lot of money doing that, engineering them, when in fact, we don't need to because Mother Nature has already given us lessons. So see this, remember the one I showed you here. A year after this was done, the next flood came by, and of course, look what it did. Just washed everything out in terms of what was on there, etc. Notice how deep that water is right there, okay? Well, I got wise enough and said, again, restoring floodplain. So all this area to the left is now what you see in the left here. I took out over 500 dump truck loads of dirt from this area and reestablished a floodplain and, again, got rid of the dirt very easily. And look what happened over time. The stream just kept widening and widening, but it was stayed stable. Every flood, nothing blew out. Here is a shot that gives you some. These are 3 Iowa DNR employees who are trying to do a fish survey, shocking there, and they can't go any further to the left because this hole drops down to 12 feet. Now remember, this is the same hole that I didn't do anything to that was this. Once we established the floodplain, Mother Nature did the work. And what happened is, time and time again, the rock would get moved and the silt out of these and make these holes deeper, and it extended the run and riffle pool ratio. So the runs and the riffles got longer and longer, which is great for creating food sources, etc., spawning grounds, and the holes got deeper. So this hole, without any excavation, no excavation whatsoever, this hole is that hole now. And that happened throughout the property. In 2004, we measured holes. You love it, we had a dinghy, little dinghy, and we had a rope with measured Secchi dicks on the bottom. We measured hole after hole, and in 2004, it was easy to do. I had no holes over 5 feet deep on the property, had 4 between 3 and 4 feet deep. In 2015, we reproduced this same study without any excavation. We did no excavation in any holes, just let the flooding work to do it, as water do it. We had 14 holes 3 to 4 feet deep, and we had 12 holes over 5 feet deep. And a number of them were in the 10 to 14 foot range. Again, when I hear people talking about engineering these deep holes, if we allow this, Mother Nature does a great job if we just provide the right circumstances. Here's an example of removing silt and soil. If you look here, there's actually a car body embedded in this area here too. This was almost 10 feet high. This is that same shot right there. If I were standing right where the riffle starts looking at the house I built, basically look what happened there. And down below you see these incredible, wonderful run riffle pools. Same thing here. This used to be a 8-foot bank to the left straight down. We just gradually took it back 4 and 5 to 1. And now every time it floods, it just spills over gradually on this. Here's an example of the same thing here. A hole that kept sloughing silt into the hole. several feet deep today. This is one of the holes. It's about 8 feet deep. This is a shot of that hole. If you look down to the far left side of the hole, imagine you're looking upstream now. That's where I took this shot from. This picture, by the way, was taken just 4 days after a 10-foot wall of water came rushing down this valley. And I'll show you that in a moment. And look how intact all that is yet. This is another example of the same thing. You see a little island here. These are the trees I talk about that are on the property. You see this island here in the stream. This is the bottom island. Bottom of that island is about 20 feet long, so it's not a long one. But notice the bank there. Again, we tried to solidify that a bit with coir, with planting and so forth. It just kept sloughing. Also, notice on the far bottom end of the stream, you'll see some sticks standing up here, kind of in the water there. That was a root ball that we put in that blew out with the very next flood. And I'll explain root balls in a minute. Wood is, I think, one of the biggest disasters you can have on a trout stream project in the driftless area. But if you take a look at that island, now look at what it looks like today. That's the bottom of the island. This shot was also, you can still see on the far right side some of the bent down grass. This also was taken 4 days after a 10-foot wall of water came rushing down this valley. And you see no damage. This is a hole. If you look forward, you can see the silt bottom to this hole. It goes up to that turn that I mentioned, the rock up there. This today, again, by just trimming this back, planting in, there's the prairies. This is all rock bottom now, about 4 to 5 feet deep. And probably what's even more telling, though, is I lived in Lake Minnetonka for many years in St. Albans Bay, and I'm an old muskie fisherman and a northern fisherman. I love to fish the weed edges, etc. And I had to relearn how to fish a trout stream in southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa with this very project. Because if you look here, look straight ahead, that little spot you see on the far right side just before the stream turns where I showed you all that silt was, I said, remember that? That's that hole. Well, here I am out there fishing with Max, the only fishing dog I ever knew that always stayed 10 feet behind me, never got in front of me without any orders. And here I am out there fishing. But one of the things I noticed was that as these prairie plants continued to grow, that we often saw the trout appearing to be dimpling right at the edge of the bank. What was going on there? It was almost like I was going to fish the edges. So, of course, following up, see that rock now? That used to be where all that silt was. That is the overlay of the prairie grasses in there. Well, remember that root structure I talked about? This underwater shots right here. All that developed this very thick undergrowth that every time a flood hit it, it punished it, it just grew more. It didn't get washed out and gone forever. And on top of it, what happened is this thing is loaded. If you can see in this shot, there's a number of places, and I'm sorry, where there's actually larvae up here in a number of different aquatic invertebrates that the fish just go in and it's like, a dessert table for them. They're right there in the root structures. And so it made it easy. So we learned how to fish the edges now because of this very issue. We did studies looking at the taxonomic richness over time. Duck and Waterloo Creek are the two main ones you want to look at. That increased dramatically from 2005 to 11. And even more importantly, the density of the macroinvertebrates increased. And you can see between 05 and 11, both the red and the blue, how the number went up. In a survey we did in 2016, 1-year survey, we actually had a number of samples that had more than 1,000 aquatic invertebrates per square foot of bottom. 1,000 aquatic species per foot of bottom. Talk about a food chain. Basically, you get a sense because it was all on getting rid of all that silt. The other thing we learned is again, you have to be very mindful of when you have this kind of work. What you see happening here is, again, looking at the trout fishing. This individual's in about 12 inches of water. And this is not an unusual situation on our property. Well, you can see he's down there fishing for something. Well, these banks are undercut. This is the 18-inch trout that he pulled out of that 1 foot of water under the bank. And this happens all the time down there. Again, by just getting those banks tight and keeping the silt from coming back in the stream. This is another shot of an area that had been grossly degraded. So I just want to point out these are a few shots of how the banks look today. Mr. Chairman, you've been down there. Here's this bank. I just happened to have this shot. This was from 2003. There is at least 1.5 feet of silt right in front of this hole. This is that same bank 3 years ago. And look at the rock. all the silt's gone, banks there, water cooling, et cetera. This is, the other thing that happened is the native plants grew back. The buttercup, et cetera, which we hadn't seen before in any nature, actually came back. It was still in the stream waiting. One last area I wanted to show you is, again, another example of what they've done here. Notice in the upper far right-hand corner of the road up there was where Duck Creek comes into the property. This is the Duck Creek Bridge looking downstream that I showed you before. This is what it looked like when I bought it. See the 5 bolts there on the bridge? See those 5 bolts? Now look at those 5 bolts. Same stream. All we did is remove the cover and restored the banks. We did nothing else today. This is one of the finest brook trout streams you could ever fish. Remarkable. Again, what happened was we did the work with the coir. We tried to solidify up against the side here so that bank wouldn't erode. The next flood, my gosh, the coir stayed, but the bank didn't. So you can see the water went right on the other side of the coir. Well, the coir stays here. So what we did again is just went in, flattened back the banks. Where we needed, we put rock as a toe protector for the initial part of the stream work. And that, by the way, this little coir log that you see here was just on the other side of this bridge. And look at that today. This has now withstood major floods. One of the tools that has often been said, use a lot of wood in streams. And one of the things was take root balls. Take basically a tree, pull it out, of a, a tree of 6 to 8 inch circumference to 15 or 20 inch circumference, and then cut it off about 8 to 10 feet up from the roots, and then just shove that into the side of the bank, secure it, and leave that root ball out there so that it basically causes some turbulence, opens up the hole, but also some protection. Well, what you see on the far right side is what's left of the root ball. And that whole bank used to go up to the edge of that root ball. Again, when you get water action in prairie soils, it's different than the sands and the rock structures you'll see in much of other areas of the upper Midwest. And so you can't handle it the same way. Prairie soils are very, very highly at risk of eroding out. So we've taken all the wood activity out. Also, this is what that same stream, see where that wood is now? This is what that same stream looks like today. Another thing we did is we followed the old idea of putting a lot of rock structures in to try to create turbulence, to open up holes, get the silt cleaned out. So we put those in, standard procedure at the time. And so there you have a little wing dam, water comes over it, and basically at that point, now it creates a little hole. Well, the next 2 floods, you can find a rock, and here today, this is what that same hole looks like with the undercut banks, but there's not a rock around. Don't know, all the floods just washed them all out. And today, that's what's left. So again, I think what I want to leave you with is, in part, when you did this work, by merely pulling back the banks, rocking the toe, and reestablishing floodplain, and I never engineered it. This stream has not moved in 15 years with all these big floods. So when you have to re-meander in rosin and all this stuff, frankly, it's not worth much to me. And never, we spend so much money doing this kind of engineering that's useless. I didn't tell the stream where to go. All I did was gave it an opportunity to basically dissipate the energy, and it went where it wanted to, and you can see what's happened as a result of it. I think we waste tons of money on that kind of work. The number of reds have increased dramatically. Maybe hard for you to see, but there are a number of very large trout on this red, the spawning bed for the trout. Another more reds there. This is one of the trout that we caught in that hole that I mentioned where the people were doing the fish survey that had been so shallow, got bigger. This is not unusual. I think that one of the things that probably is very unusual is that from 2010 through 2016, I allowed anyone, I've always allowed people to fish on it free of charge, just barbless and catch and release. But the one requirement I had is I wanted a fish report back. I wanted you to tell me what happened. And the people who fished there, Mark Johnson's in here, who's fished there. Mr. Chairman, you have, except the other Mark Johnson. I got amazing information back. And look at the mean number of fish caught over that time, from 24 to 47 a day per person. This is per person. And you can see the number of fish caught, range, browns, rainbows, brooks. Some days were good days, depending on weather, et cetera. Some days were not. But the bottom line was, this, I think, probably systematically shows the overall improvement in the fish population as well. It wasn't just that we improved the stream, but from a fishing experience, You know, if you got 78 fish in a given day, you were probably pretty happy. You're also pretty tired. Okay? But that was not an unusual situation. The other thing that we had happen is you may know that rainbow trout are not native to the upper Midwest. They come from the Rocky Mountains, where basically the spawning season is much later. And they often hatch much later in the spring, where because the winter runoff isn't until later, they don't get washed out. Here, with January thaws and February, March thaws, if a rainbow were to spawn in January, it's very likely those reds would be ruined. And so while we've stocked these, we've had very limited evidence of any naturally producing rainbows. Well, this is an example of what we see on Prairie Song Farm all the time. We have seen rainbows that are 10 to 14 inches with lockjaws, suggesting they're not stockers. But more importantly, we now have the young of year fish, and we believe that a lot of this is occurring in the third trout stream called Brook Creek, which I remeandered, which doesn't flood ever, and basically is at 50 degrees year-round just because of all the spring water. And so we actually now have a well-documented naturally producing rainbow trout, brook trout, and brown trout on the property. Just to give you some sense what this looks like, if you wanted to do the stream restoration work, all you'd have to do is really deal with the 50 to 100 feet along each stream. You don't have to do the entire property, but just getting the trees down, getting them off, not planting trees in those areas would work. But I want to give you a sense of how different this looks today. If you can see there's a little peak right up there, almost like a church peak in that tree right there, okay? If you can, I don't know if I can, I'll improvise. Right there, there's a peak right there, okay? This shot was taken in 2002. This shot was taken a couple of years later. There's Max, and there's that tree, right there. That's the difference. And again, in this case, all we worked with from a restoration standpoint was that area right adjacent to the stream. And we have data showing that the water temperature in the first 2 years I did the work, from the top of the stream, the water looked up to the bottom, actually increased a significant 0.7 degrees. Why? Because what shade was there we took off, and it left all those black bottoms totally apparent, and the black walls. Over the last 3 years of the measurement down there, the temperature dropped almost 0.8 of a degree from top to bottom. Because as it went along, it actually cooled in terms of it. And you may not be aware of this. Some of you may recall, right after 9/11, we had a situation where we had a group of students from Oregon State that had come to the St. Anthony Falls Research Station, and they went back in the airport, and they found a machine in their rental car, and they arrested them when they arrived back home in Oregon, and they were doing studies looking at the impact of water running over rock and the cooling. And when you have turbulent flow, it acts like an air conditioner. Well, the machine they had was a legitimate thing. They should never have been arrested. They just forgot to take their machine home that they were working with. But it turns out that if you have turbulent flow in the water, it actually creates an air conditioning-like effect because the water is coming up. Whereas if it's laminar on silt, it's just like this, you get no cooling. And so actually, by creating more riffles and getting the soil off of there, we actually found the water cooling. This is what it looked like when I bought it. There's that same tree a few years ago. We did use fire in our property. You don't have to do that for here. You could mow that area, or you could even do flash grazing for a period each summer to keep those stream banks free from trees and invasive species. These fires are amazingly hot. What most people don't realize is the prairie fire, while flames can often jump 40, 50 feet in the air, the top 1/2 inch of soil warms up a little bit. Below that, it doesn't warm up. Max loved being down there after a prairie fire. He would play walk-em-on with all the mice that were running around, because everybody's out running around wondering what the heck just happened, and they're all alive, and he's out there popping on them, so it was fun. This is what it looks like. I just want to point out from a restoration standpoint the runoff issue. This is huge. This is huge. We have no idea how dramatically changed the runoff is in the riffless area now. This is that hillside I had. Notice the size of the trees. All recent growth. All recent growth. Well, that shades out the bottom, and all the rain that hits just runs straight off, just straight off. And the best example I can give you, at Neil Smith National Park, which is a large prairie, dedicated prairie south of Des Moines, when they first started that, they had an area that was a large oak savanna, had been, but it had been overgrown with everything else. They went in and they cleaned that out. Basically, the oak savanna was going, the prairie got started again, and the cornfield that had been farmed right below the Oak Savanna for the previous 25 years turned into a marsh. Why? Because the water, instead of running off quickly and streaming off, soaked in like a sponge and then just came down very gradually and came out. That's what we saw here. This is what that Oak Savanna looks like today. That hillside that you saw back here, and despite major damage on hillsides all along this area with some of the big floods, we never saw any here at all. We never had a runoff event on these hillsides, despite the fact that they look this steep, and they are this steep. It was amazing. So I only point out that we can't change this. I'm not suggesting we go back and turn everything into Oak Savanna, but know that the streams of southeastern Minnesota are flashier now than ever because of between agriculture and the growth of these trees and these forests that happened like that. Let me just close a little bit with climate change. I'm not a climatologist. Epidemiologists and climatologists may sound alike, but they're actually very different. And in fact, though, there's no doubt that climate change has become a big, big, huge issue. And what we're seeing here, and the climatologists can tell you this, is that in the days of large storms of past, there were major pressure gradients that occurred, where a storm would blow from Nebraska up into Wisconsin, and as it would go by, it might have heavy rains, but it moved. Now what's happened is think about what happens in August and September in Minnesota. We get fog. Why do we get fog? Because with the cooler temperatures up above or down below, the condensation is such that you start getting fog because of the different gradient of temperature and humidity. Well, it turns out we are supersaturating the upper atmosphere right now with temperatures that we've never seen before that collect all this moisture. Well, at night what happens is they cool down. And instead of fog, it's just like running your hose against a wall over and over and over again, but there's no big pressure to move them. They just sit there. So we have what we call these training events, where it'll be like moisture just coming down straight, 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 straight. And this is where we've seen these big floods. All the floods at Prairie Song Farm, which we had over this time period, all started at 8 o'clock or later at night, and they were all done by 6 in the morning. Happened every time. So flooding has become a big issue there. Climate change is surely that. History of rainfall in the Waterloo Creek watershed in the past 15 years, this was 2 years ago, we've had 4 1,000-year floods. 4. We've had 2 numerous 100-year floods. This is an example of the different floods, and I've been there for many of them. Let me tell you, it's remarkable to suddenly see a stream go from what it is to 10 feet high in a matter of a half an hour. It's remarkable. This is an example looking out my back window of my house that I built, which, by the way, I actually modeled this and knew that there were 47 square miles of watershed above me and engineered it so that it was out of the floodplain. I actually have a FEMA cert saying it's out of the floodplain, and it's done very well so far. But this is what it can look like in no time at all. This is one side of the house here. This is what it can look like in no time at all. Now, I have a video that I was going to show that would give you a real sense of this, but unfortunately, you can't use it, but I guess they can get sent out. But this video is of this storm right here. Now, just to show you, my property is right here. And this watershed right here, up to Spring Grove, is exactly the watershed of Waterloo Creek. We got 15 inches of rain in 8 hours that night. 15 inches of rain, okay? This is in June of 2013. If I had the video, I could show you what this looks like in this whole valley, and the turbulence was remarkable, simply incredible. But it happened multiple times. This is what we have to now build our restoration projects up to. Habitat restoration has to stand. Don't tell me they're good for 2 years. Don't tell me they're good for 2 years. Tell me how good they are after the next flood like this, okay? Go ask right now this year, just look what happened down there. Look at Viroqua, Wisconsin this year. Look at Coon Valley. All the towns that got hit again with these training events, all evening storms, all of them 10 or more inches. This is going to happen over and over again. So now we've got to ask ourselves, what are we paying for? Are we paying for something that can withstand one of these events? Because if it's not, it's a mess. This is an example the night of that storm. This is a bridge that went out at a camp in Houston County. They never have found this bridge that same night. This is a project from another flooding event just downstream from me where they had spent thousands of dollars. The stream used to be half this wide. One night's flood, look what happened. Amazing. This is a shot 4 days after this big flood that I showed you in 13. And this was all underwater. Look how that's already popped up. Do you see any damage? This is the valley there. That water came over. If I had showed you the video, this water, I had the bank right at the bottom here, I had tapered very much, so the water came up and over it and avoided banging out these banks. This is that same hole that I showed you. It did take away some of the growth on the far right side, but as you see, the hole's intact. Same thing here. So in summary, you know, my habitat improvement lessons learned after 15 years of trial and error at Prairie Song Farm is climate change precipitation patterns are really important. Driftless area soil types are important, and elevation drop requires new methods of HI. Don't tell me what you do in northeastern Minnesota. Don't tell me what you do in western Minnesota. Don't tell me what you're doing in eastern Wisconsin. It's got to be tailored to these soils, these elevation drops, and these kinds of events. Plan HI work must be based on flooding conditions, not normal flow. We've got to understand it. One of the things we did is we look at every hole above and below. So if I'm sending water down from this hole and I'm tapering this bank, what does it do? Does it go to the next bank? Where does it hit? And making sure that we have that together. And that's adopting the whole above, below approach planning. Minimize the use of wood or any kind of structure in the driftless area. I see project after project using wood. Eventually it blows. It blows out. And it is rock surely in the toe. And post-HI assessment required. This is the part that I have a real challenge with, is we've got to figure out what's working and what's not. What are you paying for? Because we've now established, after a lot of lessons learned, you can put in the kind of work that actually will last flood after flood. And I don't want to hear about a 2-year follow-up. I want to hear about the major flood year follow-up, what happens. Because all it takes is one event to take out that bridge or to take out that bank, and that's what's really important. Cold water stream habitat improvement should be an ever-evolving science and practice. I'm no expert. I've surely observed a lot. My scientific mind helped me collect data and look at this. But I know what doesn't work, and I know what costs a lot of money and doesn't work. And ironically, today, we've landed on at Prairie Song Farm. If I had just done then what I eventually did, I could have saved myself $850,000. Just knowing that, just taking back the banks, rocking the toes, and letting Mother Nature do the rest. Most current driftless area restoration work is based on outdated approaches that may be useful in other stream systems, but not the driftless area, and there is a little post-restoration evaluation. And let me say post-restoration flood event evaluation. I don't, you know, again, 2 years out doesn't tell me anything if you haven't had a flood event. Our work at Prairie Song Farm supports the prairie grass restoration of stream banks, including the removal of riparian trees and excess bank soil and strategic limited rock placements, a highly cost-effective and long-term solution for greatly improving driftless area stream habitat. I hope that, you know, this is helpful to you as you think about funding projects and what you're getting for evaluation. What are they actually doing? I never thought I'd say this as a scientist. Don't over-engineer it, because I've seen people trying to re-meander these streams to fit rosin and criteria, et cetera. In 16 years, that stream hasn't moved an inch. And not because I told it not to, we just gave it a chance not to, and it was the cheapest thing we could possibly have done. When you take and re-engineer these streams and where they go, it's a waste of money, I believe, and it doesn't accomplish at all in the end what we're trying to accomplish, and that is providing the kind of stable and healthy stream environments there. Last piece I would say, people say you got to do the whole watershed to get it. There were major flooding damage above me, major flooding damage below me with each one of these floods, none here. You can do it 1 mile at a time. And even though the silt continues to wash down, we've not seen accumulation of silt here because it's not coming out of the banks. And I would always encourage, you can get a mile here, get a mile there, get another mile there. That's a great advantage, and you don't need to do a whole watershed at a time. Ideally you could, but you don't have to. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and just tell you that this was a very, very special place. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. I think this is a different type of presentation than we've heard before in terms of how to do restorations, and I'm guessing there might be a question or two if you're willing to answer them.
Sure, if I can. Thank you.
I had one question, Dr. Osterholm.
Sure.
You said there was 300 feet of drop, but it must not be in the stream. How much does the stream drop from top to bottom?
Thank you, Councilman McNamara. Let me just quickly, I don't know if I can't go back to that, can I here? Anyway, it's only 30-some feet per mile, so the stream drop was there, but from the top, which is where the water's coming down, and that's where many of the hillsides, and you hear about flooding events in southeastern Minnesota, and you hear about these road closures and so forth because these big hillsides just slough off, and that's what that was. So you're right. It's about 30 feet on Waterloo Creek from top to bottom drop on my property.
Mark has a question.
Dr. Osterholm, could you mention about some of the subsequent studies on like the pollinators, especially the hummingbird stuff that happened?
Yeah, actually, it turns out that, this is not for promotion, okay, I promise. There was a book written about our work down there called Creek Finding, a children's book writer, a Caldecott winner, that the New York Times actually in 2017 listed as one of the 100 best books of the year. And it was about reestablishing Brook Creek, the creek that had been ditched, and we now have the native brook trout growing in it. It's remarkable. But the second book right now is on the red-headed woodpeckers, because when we reestablished the oak savanna, we actually also suddenly, how the woodpeckers found this, I don't know, but they did, and they've now taken over in there, and as well as the hummingbirds. And it turns out that the hummingbird population has expanded greatly here, and we think at least in part, not totally, it's due to the fact that we've had a major increase in raptors, and particularly owls. At night, it sounds like a symphony out there with the owls calling. And as a result, we've seen reduced populations of raccoon and possum. And hummingbirds, as you may know, actually are very, very susceptible to raccoon and possum at night because they go into a thing called torpor. Torpor is a semi-hibernation stage where they sit on a tree branch and they literally are out of it. You go pick them off the branch. Well, at night, they make easy picking for raccoon. But with the raptors there, the raccoon populations have been limited, and as such, we've seen this kind of explosion of the hummingbird population with that. So it's kind of one off that's kind of occurred. So anyway, so that's I think what you're asked about. So the next book is actually going to be on how did the red-headed woodpecker come back for a children's book.
So as we see proposals that come in for restoration, what advice would you give to this council in terms of questions we should ask the proposers for how to do the work and what not to do? How do we take what you've explained here and put it to benefit for the state?
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you. And I have listened to many of your proceedings over the years. While not attending, I've listened to the recordings. I think you get a lot of, how should I say, engineering talk that sometimes I've come to realize is that it's in my business, we have a thing called modeling, where people will try to predict what's going to happen in the future. And these models may only predict 5% of what we know for variability, but they claim that they can tell you what's going to happen. I think we over-engineer these projects in ways that are not helpful, and we spend lots of money doing that. I think that basically if somebody's coming in and doing somewhat similar to what we're doing, basically reestablishing floodplains, rocking the toes where necessary, and then making sure that over the following years, they keep those stream banks clean, whether they want to do flash grazing or mow it even once a summer is just all you need to do. I think that's what's really key. But the final thing is evaluation. I think I have seen both in all three states, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, many projects that consumed millions of dollars that are worthless today because of what's happened with the weather-related events. And, if that was a highway or a bridge project and the bridge went out after the first flood, do you think anybody would just be sitting aside saying that's okay? And so I think that we need to do much more evaluation to ask ourselves what will hold. We can hold. I mean, we've demonstrated that here. And ironically demonstrated it with the least technology and, frankly, the easiest approach. That still hasn't been accepted by many. And so I think that that's the one area that I would say, you want evaluation data back, real pictures, people to independently validate what's going on. And most of all, keep people from planting stuff along the side of streams like woodies. I see projects here today where people take them on and think that they're going to add shade. If you want to do that, go up north, okay, because that's exactly where they need that, okay? That is a different soil type, geology, et cetera, but not down in the driftless area. And so anybody that comes in wanting to plant woody of any kind along a stream, that would be reason to never fund the project at all.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Jamie?
Just one quick one. You briefly mentioned the Army Corps. I know a lot of project proposers end up doing a lot of these engineering practices because the permitting process dictates it. What would you say to the DNR or the Army Corps as far as what your experience is on the permitting process?
Well, the same thing I've already said to the DNR. I think that, again, we have to take a step back. You know, if you go to school to learn how to weld, everything in your life looks like it should be welded. If you go to school to chase infectious disease bugs, everything kind of gets to be about infections, okay? Unfortunately, we've trained a whole lot of individuals today in stream restoration, in geomorphology, et cetera, that this is the way it has to be done. You know, and I think that we need to take a step back. And when I see people being brought in from Montana to tell us how to do stream restoration here, and their whole focus and their whole experience is what you do in the mountains, has no credibility with me whatsoever, none. And I think that's what we have to ask ourselves, what kind of work? And there are people who have a lot of experience in the driftless area who've come to the same conclusion that I have now, that it's the under-engineering, you might say, that actually has been more successful. And that it's really about that, and it's the cheapest way to do it. And then let the pudding be in, you know, the proof in the pudding be what happens after the major floods. And ask for that. You know, this should be every summer a test case. Which streams flooded and what do they look like now? Get pictures, understand why. And if they did not perform well, why did they not perform well? What can we do to improve it? And I think that's what's really important.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great for us. So we're scheduled for a break, 15 minutes. We'll come back at 20 of 11.